You know, the Ten Commandments, they're one of the most famous texts in all of human history, right? A cultural icon pretty much everyone recognizes. But what if I told you that behind that epic image of stone tablets and a voice from the heavens, there's a story that is way more complex, way more surprising, and honestly, a whole lot more interesting than you probably think?
Go on, just take a second. Close your eyes and picture it. What do you see? Is it an ancient scroll, maybe a fancy old book? Or is it something a little more, shall we say, cinematic?
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that for a ton of us, the image that just popped into our heads is something exactly like this. You know, Charlton Heston is Moses, standing on that mountain, larger than life, holding two perfectly carved, rounded stone tablets. It's an incredibly powerful image, no doubt, but it's really just the opening scene of the story.
Okay, so that iconic image is just that, an image. When we step away from Hollywood and actually dive into the text itself, we hit our first major surprise. Because, and get this, it turns out there isn't just one version of the Ten Commandments.
That's right, you heard me correctly. This foundational text, this cornerstone of Western civilization, shows up twice in the Hebrew Bible. Once in the book of Exodus, and then again in the book of Deuteronomy. And here's the kicker, they're not identical. While a lot of the commandments are the same, there are some subtle but really significant differences between them.
So the most famous difference between them? It all comes down to the Sabbath. In the Exodus version, the reason you're supposed to rest on the seventh day is, well, cosmological. It's because God rested during creation, so you should too. Simple enough. But then you look at Deuteronomy, and the reason is completely different. It's historical. It's social. It commands people to rest because they were once slaves in Egypt, and so they should give their own servants a day off. It's the exact same rule, but with two profoundly different reasons behind it.
So not only are there two versions, but the plot thickens. The complexity goes even deeper. Because even something as simple as counting to 10, well, it turns into a real puzzle. It sounds so basic, right? But how these commandments are actually numbered has been a huge debate for centuries.
And a big part of this puzzle is that the original Hebrew doesn't even call them the 10 Commandments. Nope, the term it uses actually translates to the 10 words or the 10 sayings. Now this is a huge deal because a word can be a single little phrase or it can be a whole paragraph. This leaves the door wide open for all kinds of interpretations about where one word ends and the next one begins.
So what happens? You get different religious traditions numbering the commandments in completely different ways. Jewish, Catholic, and Protestant traditions all end up with 10 for sure, but they get there by grouping these words differently. For example, in the Jewish tradition, I am the Lord your God is the entire first commandment. But for Catholics, that's just the intro. And then you get to the end of the list, and some traditions lump all the coveting stuff into one single commandment, while others actually split it into two separate ones. There is no single, universally agreed upon way to count them.
Okay, so all these internal complexities are fascinating, right? But to really get a handle on the Decalogue's true significance, we have to zoom out. We need to place it in its original home, the ancient Near East, a world that was already buzzing with gods and kings and, you guessed it, law codes.
Let's be clear, the Israelites were not the first people to write down a bunch of laws, not by a long shot. The famous Code of Hammurabi from Babylon, that predates the Ten Commandments by centuries. So creating codes to govern your society, that was pretty common practice in the ancient world. But the Decalogue did something that these other law codes just didn't.
You see, most ancient law codes were all about actions. What happens if you steal someone's ox or if you damage their field? The Decalogue, it goes into a completely new territory, the human mind. The command, you shall not covet, isn't about doing something physical. It's about an internal feeling, a desire, a thought. This was absolutely radical. It was a law code that tried to regulate not just what you do, but your conscience itself.
And that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? Why? Why has this particular set of 10 words, from a pretty small ancient nation, echoed through history with so much power, while all those other, older law codes are now mostly just studied by historians?
Well, there are a few really key reasons. First, it's authority. It's not presented as the laws of some king. It's presented as the direct speech of God. That's a big deal. Second, its focus is on ethics, on morality itself, rather than just a laundry list of crimes and punishments. Third, its brilliant portability. It's this short, memorable summary of an entire worldview that you can literally carry around in your head. And finally, of course, it became a foundational text for 3 of the world's major religions.
Because of this totally unique combination of things, The Decalogue just transcended its origins. It wasn't just another religious text. It became a model for justice, a basis for law, and this fundamental pillar of ethical thought that would go on to shape entire civilizations for thousands of years.
So the story of the Ten Commandments is so much richer than just 2 stone tablets. It's a story of different versions, of tricky interpretations, of radical innovation, and incredible lasting influence. Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. A moral and legal code that's nearly 3,000 years old is still provoking debate and shaping our modern sense of right and wrong. What does its enduring power really say about our constant search for meaning and order in the world?